Hey everyone. I'm talking quietly because Diane is asleep. She's a bit jet lagged because she just came back from Europe, from Amsterdam and Paris, where she went to see the Dutch masters, the Dutch painters. Now, Diane specializes in arts and consciousness, and in order to understand what that means, you're going to have to listen to this episode. Because what happened, she wanted to tell me all about her trip, and I said, hold on, tell it to me in front of the microphones. So this was recorded a few nights ago, and you'll hear it for the first time, like I did, on air. Kabbalistic Mystic, episode 27, The Impressionists. So, what book did you want to show me?
Oh, I got this awesome book at the Musée d'Orsay called The Private Lives of the Impressionists. And, I know a lot about the Impressionists because of studying them, but, I don't really know their lives. I don't know,
So hold on. Let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Who are the Impressionists? I know I asked you that before, but I keep forgetting. So maybe you can help me remember. Because hold on, can I just say something?
Yeah.
The way my mind works, because it's so linear, it doesn't remember the names.
Okay.
Unless you explain how the name is related in terms of the word impression to what they did. And then I'll remember. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well,
Why are they called
task.
impressionists?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so yes, let me start there because that's the big key. They were sort of accidentally named the Impressionists, but I have to back up before give you a little context.
Okay.
So the Impressionists were a group of painters in Paris and then also in Holland, but they started in in France.
Uh-huh.
And they basically were a small group of painters who were not following the tradition of Les Écoles des Beaux-Arts, which was the primary art school of the day, which from that art school, you basically had your, I forget what they were called. It was like your painters for the bourgeois, for the political, for...
So what you're saying is that the entire art scene was structured in somewhat the way academia is now for science. It's like you have to pass through a particular process to get certified, and then you work for.
Absolutely,
there was a system. There was no free art.
No, exactly.
Okay.
So you had to go to school, and you had to learn to draw, and you had to learn anatomy. People studied anatomy.
Wow, the whole thing was structured.
Very structured. You had to study the masters like Rembrandt and Velasquez.
Now, what year are we talking about?
So we're talking about the 1860s.
So 150 years ago.
Yeah.
150 years ago, there was a shift of consciousness in the collective consciousness when it comes to art.
Yes.
Art started
shift.
to be. So how would you describe that shift?
So here's what happened. So this group started. They wanted to be artists. So these young men, they were all pretty much men except a few, wanted to be artists, but and some of them even applied to the art school to be part of it because that was already the set system, right? But some of them didn't get in, and then they started studying with they called them ateliers, places, sort of studios in town in Paris. I'll study with this master.
The off-Broadway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They were studying with the off-Broadway teachers, right? Who had been part of the system, but were either older or not part of it anymore, or whatever. Yeah. But so they were still learning the skills of drawing.
So they knew how to draw.
Oh, yeah. They all knew how to draw. They all knew how to have perspective,
Yeah, so the question here, so that means that drawing can be taught.
Oh, yeah. Well, drawing's a practice. I mean, drawing, yeah, absolutely.
So the linear art can be learned even by those who are oriented towards the feminine, the more abstract art.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to me, drawing. So, just personally, I'll speak about drawing in my own life. Like, drawing has been sort of an albatross for me around my neck. That I don't feel like I'm a good drawer draftsman because it's so masculine. It's so left brain. Like the perspective is hard for me. I often feel like my work doesn't look like what I'm drawing. And then, the frustrated critic comes in. Actually, the critic comes in and then I get frustrated. So it's been something I've started and stopped probably for 30 years. And, like I'm decent, but I'm not nowhere near somebody who can really draw.
So if to summarize this, it sounds like it was always because you're a beautiful artist when it comes to abstract, but it sounds like the masculine side of your expression was never honed.
Yeah, I would say it wasn't mastered.
Mastered, nice.
It wasn't mastered.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely have dipped into it.
So it makes sense to me that if these people were your heroes, like the impressionists,
that you would learn to draw,
that you would, and they knew how to draw, then you would feel that, because it feels to me like knowing you. I mean, you're my wife, right? And just to give context here, Diane, my wife, who I'm speaking with right now, just came back from Holland and Paris, and she's been there on a trip in order to study the Dutch masters. Diane is a painter. And she studies consciousness through painting, consciousness of the people. She paints their consciousness. She studies the collective consciousness through art history. She studies arts and consciousness. She's enjoying it. It's her, as her husband, I can tell you that she lights up when she does anything that has to do with art. And it's beautiful to see. It's almost like how I'm getting excited when I'm talking about Kabbalah and the models and all that good stuff. And she came back, and I have not heard almost anything about her trip. So she's really telling me for the first time now kind of what happened in the trip.
From the art perspective.
From the art perspective. Yeah. So it's 4 a.m., 4:30, is it?
Yeah, it's like 4:30 in the morning. Jet lag.
And Dan joined me here, and we started talking about it. And then, we talk about it, and we start talking about these things. And I was like, hold on. Got the podcasting station, because I thought you might be interested. So that's that's how this came about. So, are you comfortable?
Yeah.
Oh, good. So where were we? Now let's go back to the trunk. It was the impressionist. You like them because to me, I look at you and I know you're you remember you were in the corporate world, but you quit for the art. You're like the sort of embody that rebel, like let's break out of that thinking type of person. Like you always say that you wanted to live in the 60s, right? And it's like, people who broke convention, right? Are like all your heroes are people who broke conventions. Yeah. And these are sort of the people who broke convention for art.
In their time.
In their time.
Well, so this is what's so interesting to me. I studied art history, and I know them, but I don't think I even got until this trip how radical it was what they were doing at the time. So here's what happens. So every year in Paris, there's this huge salon that they have where like 3,000 artists, show their work. Now, mind you have to go back into 1860 in your mind. In Paris, there's no cars. There's no, obviously there's no technology. There's no way for artists to be seen except for some of these huge salons. This is like a once a year thing. So if hang on. Yeah. So a lot of the artists come from the school that they've studied at and then are in the system. So if you weren't part of that system, it was very hard to get into the salon. Do you get it? So they wouldn't even be able to show their work.
Why didn't just have a website?
So they wouldn't even be able to show their work, which means they wouldn't get patrons. They wouldn't be able to sell their work. So getting into this thing was a really big deal.
Right.
So if you were breaking with convention, which nobody really had because, they were all playing the game, But what happened with Monet and Pissarro and Cézanne and Manet, so there's Manet, Manet, and then Monet, Monet, confusing. Renoir, they all became friends, and they started painting with really bold colors. They started doing scenes from nature. Like, this was unheard of. They just, like, it just didn't really happen. It was portraiture. It was political scenes. It was religious scenes. It was reinterpretations of past religious scenes. But what they did, and then the brush strokes themselves, what we know as so like, oh, everybody loves the impressionists now, right? Like, oh, Monet, water lilies. Oh, yeah, I love those. They're so common and they're so like pleasing to the eye. Back then, it was shocking. It's like, oh my God, look at the, not only the subject matter and the palette of like the bright reds or the bright oranges or the bright blues or the bright purples, but look at the quality of the brush strokes. And that those brush strokes broke with convention, which was to make it all silky smooth, like your...
When these conservative people looked at this art, was it a fear of promiscuity? Was it a did they fear a threat to their art? Did they get the art, or did they just think from their state of consciousness, this is just stupid? Like, what was their state of consciousness if you were to put yourself in the heads of those who rejected it?
Okay, so a couple things on that. So first of all, yes to all of that. First, it was like they went in and they literally were well, I have to back up because to put it back into context, they did not get in. So all these artists I just named, the one that we know, those of, we all are really pretty familiar with Monet and Cézanne and, whatever other Renoir, that they didn't even get into the shows. So what happened is, the second year this happened, there was kind of an uproar in the art scene. Like, there was a big uproar because of, like, so many people didn't get in, that the uproar in France at the time caused Napoleon to say, this is a little out of hand.
Wow.
And it's so out of hand.
Like, were they riots? Stuff
well,
like
no. That there was so out of hand that he decided, okay, we're going to have another salon that's going to be the refused people. So they had a show, they had an art show that was all the people who were rejected.
That's actually brilliant, and from a leader's perspective, to do that. And that is how giving everybody what they want.
That is how they got exposure. That's how they first got seen in a bigger way, in a bigger context. So what happens is people come, and like 70,000 people came. And oh my God, people, first of all, they were laughing. They thought it was ridiculous. Wasn't even like, this isn't even good art because it's not representational and the proportions, are slightly off. The colors, they felt like were just like, oh, you can't paint, a tree orange or a tree red or just like, do whatever you want.
Okay, right there. But when they say you can't, I'm still trying to understand. You can't because, well, what do they feel?
Because of convention. They're feeling like their way.
If you were to name an emotion, what was the emotion that these people felt? The rejectors. How did you call that school?
Is Les Écoles de Beaux-Arts?
Les Écoles de Beaux-Arts. What was the emotion they felt?
Well, it wasn't them. It was, the people coming to see it. It was society, basically. It was the upper bourgeois and sort of moving up middle class. They felt, I would say, probably fear and, intrigue, because they were horrified.
So horror horrified is from the word horror, which means that it's fear. So what were they afraid of?
Well, if you think about it, here are these artists who are quote unquote not following the rules, which means the fabric of society is starting to fray. It's starting to come apart.
Exactly.
And that the way things are, and let's just talk about that for a minute, because the way things are falling apart. More people, like there was a very, there was kind of a caste system, if you will, or a class system. There was the upper elite and the bourgeois who really ruled and had the money. But at this particular time in Paris, there was a middle class that was growing. And that growing middle class, is kind of starting to infringe into the bourgeois and the upper classes place, which then is pushing the poorer people out of the city. So all of this is like, society's definitely coming apart a little bit as they knew it. And this is, I actually feel like, though they may not have known it, this is part of what is happening during the Impressionist time. So they're breaking the rules of convention. And once we break the rules of convention, and I think that's why artists in their own time, like those artists who are really on the edge of, reflecting culture, they're usually not understood. They're usually rejected in the beginning until the collective consciousness comes along to feel comfortable enough that there's a mass of that collective that says, oh, okay, I'll accept this. So, this was the beginning. And, like this one painting, I can't remember which one, but this one painting where Manet, he painted this woman who's looking directly out at you with really bold colors. And it's sort of like the woman in the painting is almost confronting you as the viewer. And this one was like a huge, like, oh my God.
Wow. So they literally painted the state of consciousness of a woman disobeying or what was the look like of that woman? Was it like
very unafraid,
do you have
very
a picture?
Confrontive. I don't think I
like
do.
On your phone. Did you take a picture of that?
Well, no, I didn't see that particular one. I'm reading this book that's called, it's so good. Let me just see if there's the picture. I don't think so.
What would you say the emotion of the woman in the painting?
I think it's confidence and strength.
Yeah. The strong feminine.
Like the strong feminine where. Yeah. And then Renoir had, I just read in this book, he went out to the country to paint, and he was painting just a scene in the town, and these people came along. Now, mind you, Renoir, he's another one really well known with the rosy cheeks and pastoral kind of.
Yeah, I remember that one. The peachy cheeks.
Peachy rosy cheeks, yeah. Anyway, these people come along and they literally mock him while he's painting and make fun of him.
Wow.
And this one guy comes and flips his palette onto the ground, and this guy comes out of the bush. Oh, and they start poking at him with a parasol.
Wow.
Oh, it was like, it was a big deal. And so this guy comes out of the bushes. Somehow he's like behind Renoir, and he sort of shoos people off, and it turns out he's a fellow painter, and he's like, oh, nice, not bad. And so they start talking, and Renoir's like, wow, like this is really intense. Like it's intense. So they broke the rules, and they went out of the convention of doing what was the right thing to do. So it was a huge shift of consciousness. And then we have Van Gogh over in, he started in Holland because he's Dutch, but then he moved to France, and he becomes part of that school, but sort of influenced by the Impressionists. But his work was pretty radical, and he wanted to do the peasants. He painted a lot of peasants, which were really like people didn't really care about the peasants. They didn't.
All right, hold on. Too much details. I'm getting lost.
Okay.
So let's go back.
Yes.
So we have they're called the Impressionists.
Yes.
Right. So let's go back to the first question. It's like why they're called the Impressionists. Because is it because they painted an impression of something versus the something itself?
Yes. So then what happens later, I think they get that name a little later when this art dealer in London and Paris, so for 10 years, this guy, I can't remember his name at the moment, he kind of supports some of them. And he takes 300 works to America, to New York, and basically puts them on the map. And so the name, the Impressionists, came from Monet, who just randomly came up with that name for the show. Like, this is the show of the Impressionists. And yeah, basically the reason it's called the Impressionists, they do an impression of, whatever, a pastoral scene or flowers.
I think it's a great name. I don't think there are any mistakes, first of all.
Oh, no, it's a perfect name.
I think it's a perfect
because
name,
it actually is an impression.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not
so
perfectly
you
detailed.
You said something in the beginning how like they were named by mistake or something. Oh yeah, that's what you meant, by mistake, but still a good name. Oh,
yes.
So it's interesting. So when you said in the beginning that they were named by mistake,
the
energy I got was like as if it was somebody as if it's not really their name.
No. Yeah, it was sort of perhaps not the right choice of words, but it was like a random. Sort of random.
Sort of like
wasn't like very well thought out. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Sort of like,
but feels very channeled.
Totally channeled.
Yeah.
Because they are the Impressionists.
Do you remember where we saw Renoir together for the first where you taught me what Renoir was?
I think that was at Musée d'Orsay.
I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah, I have a whole different memory.
Where was that?
It was in Paris. It was the year we got married, right?
2007.
Yeah, and that's when we were in Paris, right?
Yeah.
So that was exactly
10 years ago.
Yeah. And we were in Paris, and I remember, so here's what I remember. I remember it was a beautiful day. I remember
remember that.
I'm talking.
Uh-huh.
I remember it was a beautiful day, and we were outside of a church. We just visited a beautiful Gothic church type of thing. And there were these steps there, and we were literally in one of those back alleys in France, and there was, these painters, and you showed me, I don't know why, but there was a painting of Renoir. It was like, I know which one. He's like, he was painting the women at the beach. They were all like vacationing.
Oh,
you
yes.
know? And he was just like a day at the beach or something, a day at the lake, and he was painting. That's what he was doing. It was his day at the thing, and everybody was playing, and and he was, and I remember you pointed the cheeky cheeks, the peachy cheeks, the cheeky peaks, and you were telling me how do you see how it's like peachy, like it's literally like samuk in Hebrew, samuk. The root will be samak. Oh, okay. Right there. An example how Hebrew works. So I wanted to understand what it was. So in Hebrew, every word has a root of 3 letters. Samuk was the letter in Hebrew, and it means to blush.
Oh, that's it.
That's it.
He painted the blushing young maidens.
Young maidens. There you go.
Yeah.
That's the energy.
Wow.
So to me, the way I see because I don't look at the visual like you.
Oh, yeah.
I just feel the energy of it, and it comes across as an emotion. I live in that world. Deb, my friend, lives in that world too. That's how we feel. We feel the vibration of the emotion. In his paintings, that's what you see. You see that young girl. He is aroused, but he's not aroused sexually. He's aroused mentally by that state of consciousness, and he really likes that feminine, the juicy, almost like just fascinated by the beauty of femininity at its youth.
Yeah.
And that's what he likes to paint. Didn't we see a movie about him? Do you remember what it was called?
I remember that. Renoir.
Renoir?
I don't know.
Well, okay, I'll research that. But it was a good movie. He was painting
That was
this
a good
woman
movie.
or something, and then was he the guy who painted his wife's earring?
No.
Who was the artist?
That was Girl with a Pearl Earring.
Yeah, who was that artist that painted
That's a Dutch painter.
Also, like his wife, he had this young model, right?
Yeah, that's a great book. I think it's a movie too.
We watched that
Girl
movie
with
together.
the Pearl Earring.
So the point was the
That's
story.
a Dutch one.
But he also the
the
equivalent.
young, yes.
Yeah, he wanted to paint that, and he painted it on that woman, and then his wife could see, because you look at the painting, and the painting told the story.
Yeah.
The painting showed what he saw in the young model.
Felt.
Yeah, and in the young model of the earrings, there was this young, luscious, very, and the wife saw it, and it was painful.
Yeah.
But here it is, her husband, he's like this painter.
Yeah.
And this is what I love about art. Like Diane was the one who taught me to look at art, because art reflects the consciousness of humanity, and it reflects art is a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it, and this is why these people the reason I stick to the emotions, because they were afraid. They were horror.
They were afraid.
What are we afraid of? We're afraid of our own shadow. Art mirrored society, and therefore, so this is the state of consciousness of conservatism. Everywhere, even now. And it's needed. There's a need to that too. The truth is always in the middle.
Yeah.
Conservatism protects.
So said the Buddha.
There you go. What did he say?
It's the middle path is the way.
Okay, I have to drink. Hold on, but this is. Hold on, choking here. It's like I speak too fast. Oh my God, the autistic's trying to talk to the artist. Like, this is what's happening, people. Do you get that? Like, this is my life.
Mine.
And yours. No, see how she took that, like, but don't forget about my suffering. You see, like, I was cut. Like, literally, I was telling a story. And
really?
You cut.
Telling a story?
Yeah. Think of the energy of what just happened.
Okay.
I am. I'm trying to express, and you took literally the energy of the entire story to you. I'm this autistic guy who is literally thinking in patterns and trying to communicate to a woman who it took me 7 years to learn her body language. And not because she knew that I'm trying to study her body language, but because I literally had to learn, because I'm not visual, so I'm not looking at the body language. Classic metaphor was that note you left me under the Shabbat goblet, right? Gavia. She left me this beautiful note. You left me this beautiful note under this, like this beautiful, really.
I was going to be gone.
This is be gone. And the whole Shabbat without Diane is not Shabbat for me. So she leaves me this note it's so sweet. That's just going to be her representation in my ritual so I can have. But she puts it under the goblet.
Which I thought of.
Like, it registers in my consciousness, but so fleetingly, because I'm just not looking at so hold on, I'll try to explain from her perspective. She put it that her art, she makes these beautiful cards herself, and the art of the card was facing up, and the art of the card is what's draw the attention, but I don't look at it. I'm very mechanical about my movement in the physical world because I'm in my mind all the time. And therefore I didn't even notice the colors, it was just like an object. And then today, when you come back, you're like, it's Shabbat again. And you come back perfectly for Shabbat ritual. And you pull that and you say, you didn't find it. And I realized that this is the metaphor for our pattern of communication. Did you get that?
You didn't get my message.
Exactly.
That's
because your
exactly
messages are always visual.
Huh.
I have to look at you, at your body language. So let's go back to your story.
Okay.
So there were these impressionists, and you like them, and you got a book or something.
Sounds so boring.
What's the book about?
Well, it's called the Private Lives of the Impressionists. and I've just started it, but it's the whole journey of this group that comes together that is breaking ground, that is breaking ground and really, like we just talked about, is sort of shocking the art world. So, they have this show in New York. They get their paintings shipped to New York by this guy, Paul, I think his name's Paul Rand. And that puts them on the map. So then Americans, because Americans are not so, what's the word? Bound.
Kiss the audience.
Oh.
I want to hear a kiss.
Can you hear it? Hello.
Yes. That's the kiss you give your audience. Come on. Oh, there you go. More. Can you give him some French love?
Hello, les audiences. Je vais parler en français, en fait.
I love when you talk French. Turns me on, baby.
Les Français se revenaient.
Who?
C'était très bon. My French came back. It was like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they get put on the map by this show. But even so, it's a big stir. So Van Gogh, I also went to Holland because Van Gogh is really one of my main heroes. He only painted for 10 years, really. 10 years. And he produced so much art.
Wow.
But, he was a seeker. He was a spiritual seeker.
Uh-huh.
He was a seeker of his own style.
Yeah, we read a great book about him. What was the name of that book?
Yeah, it was his letters to his brother. It's like letters to Theo.
Letters to Theo, that's the name.
I've read several books about him, but
it was a great book. I really enjoyed it. Like, it really helped me understand. Like, he was a seeker.
He was a seeker.
He had intense experiences.
He wanted to be a minister, and that didn't work out. And then he
was sent to the mines, and he fell in love with the people in the mines, but couldn't help
him. He kept painting them. So I saw the Potato Eaters. Potato Eaters is one of his. So here's the thing with Van Gogh. So let's jump over to Van Gogh because he goes to France.
Okay.
And, everybody knows Van Gogh. His beginning work. So I went to this museum in Holland that is not.
Can you just say for those who don't know Van Gogh? Because I didn't.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, my.
All good.
Van Gogh was born a Dutch Van Gogh. Van Gogh.
Oh, really?
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh.
Oh,
Sounds very Hebrewish. He was born. He's a Dutchman, and he really struggled with depression, and he wanted to very spiritual, seeking the spiritual. Wanted, like I said, to become a minister, like his father. His father was a minister, and his brother was. It's like he just struggled.
Yeah.
And I think that painting was his solace, as it is for many artists. Like, I have a lot of artist friends and for myself included, like art has a healing power. It soothes the soul. Just the very act of making art, for me, it makes me cry. It's like, oh, it's so healing, So I feel for him because he's just like, he's in so much pain so much of his life. But he goes to live with the miners in, actually in France, I think.
Uh-huh.
And he does these paintings of the peasants. And he wanted to paint peasants because he just felt like there's a realness about them.
So what's the Potato Eaters? Is that one of those paintings?
Yeah, so the Potato Eaters is one of his very famous earlier paintings, and it's a family of, I think it's 5, might be 6. It's a very dark painting that's lit by this one central light hanging above their table, and they're eating potatoes, and it's just like that's their food, that's their fare. They have potatoes. Very humble life. Painting's dark and gray.
It sounded like he painted the poverty.
Yes.
The social like structure of the whole miners.
Yes. So could I say it differently? Maybe this would get through. He painted like the soot of the mine
Oh.
dirt on in their lives
Yeah.
with the grays and the browns.
Oh, so there's all these people who are getting, the coal to heat, and suddenly there's paintings who show
The
what's
people
behind,
who,
sort of like the video that shows us the people who are making our iPhones.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
That
Thank you.
is awesome.
This is why art is so important, everybody. You have to look at art as a reflection of humanity. Without art, we don't see ourselves. With art, we can understand where in society we need to heal. Art is a mirror. But there's a key point here.
Mm.
The archetypes always stay the same.
Mm.
Whatever he painted, we can look at the potatoes painting and it lives forever. That's what makes it great art, because it reflects exactly those people in China who are making our iPhones.
Right.
That's the potatoes.
Potato eaters.
The potato eaters. It reflects the people who don't have money to feed in America right now.
Yes.
It reflects the people who can only afford McDonald's.
Yes.
It's
why I want it. I'm just going to jump to my own art, because that is why I love my own painting, the rickshaw driver. Because it's the faceless, and I made him faceless because in India, that country moves on rickshaws. You know what I mean? It's like people move, millions of people move around with rickshaws, people who are peddling other people around the cities to get through the mass of humanity. And they're faceless.
Now you're making me feel regret that you sold that painting. Damn it.
I know. I'm telling you, that was an amazing painting.
It is
an amazing painting.
Well, I'm glad Raveen got it.
Raveen, and well, it's to our friend Raveen, who
is
from India. And if there were, I wouldn't sell it to anybody.
I know.
Like I felt
it's almost like selling it to Raveen. We still have it, type of thing.
Yeah, because and he's family, and he's from that country.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't sell it to. And so this is, to me, good art is not only technically well done, but holds a feeling in it. And so Van Gogh, I just want to say his palette, reflected the dark, really, really dark dinginess of the mines and the soot and not only the soot, but it's dark down in there.
He was also, I remember from the book, he was also involved in a mine accident. There was a horrible mine accident that he was involved in. So he got to see carnage and body parts.
I forgot about
dragged people. Like he was the priest. And that's what happened. And here's the priest. And I remember reading that story and I thought to myself, here's a teacher. Like he was in a way he was enlightened. Like he definitely had the suffering down. He couldn't quite break away from the archetype of the, and to become in the strength of it. But from a love perspective, he knew how to love. So there's this horrible accident happens in the mine. And here's this priest. What does he do? He carries the wounds. The wounded. He carries them. And then he shows up. He consoles. And it's all described in the book. Through the letters, he writes his brother while criticizing himself for only doing that. That's the state of consciousness of Van Gogh.
Poor thing.
So he literally, the enlightened Jesus, which was his hero, right? And yet he cannot see it because he busy berating himself. And he ended up killing himself.
Yeah, he was very troubled. But I think the thing is,
this is the power of unworthiness.
Yeah, he was very humble, and he had a huge inner self-critic. And let's just say this again, contextually, we think, now many people know him and think he's amazing. There's a whole Van Gogh museum in Amsterdam that I went to. It's incredible. It is where I just want to say this to all of you. If you ever go to Amsterdam, it is so worth going to see that museum. Again? It's The entire museum is devoted to Van Gogh. And this is really beautiful. It was built by, I think it was his great nephew or something like that. It was built by somebody who was in his family's lineage. And so I think his brother's son's son.
Wow.
Yeah.
For the contest, that what you just said is even more meaningful because Van Gogh actually didn't get to sell a painting in his life. He actually died before he was recognized, which is such a metaphor for his unworthiness.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he died without selling any paintings.
So here he dies, and yet generations later, they build a museum.
Well, and not only that, I mean, he's one of the most renowned, well-known artists in the world. Yeah. Period.
Well, you cut your ear, you'll do that. Is that the one?
No, that's not why.
Yeah, but still, you have to admit, you cut your ear,
yeah, but
you'll
it's
be
not
remembered.
why. Like.
Hey, when I didn't know shit about art, I knew the name Van Gogh.
Okay,
with all due respect.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, we diverge. So the museum is. It's just beautifully done. It takes you through the periods of his art making, and it shows you, like, they have these pieces where he painted because he didn't really have much money. He was living a very frugal life, and so he was obsessed with painting, and he started using the other side of old canvases. So they have a few paintings where it's framed and it's floating in a glass thing where you can see both sides.
Wow, that's
so
cool.
The rejected one and then the newer quote unquote one that he.
Wow, so he would draw something and then they tell him no, so he would do it on the other side.
No, they wouldn't tell him. He wasn't even part of that whole
right. He wasn't
thing.
Part of the scene.
He wasn't part of the scene.
So
he was just practicing, but he himself rejected it. And so then he would work on the other side.
His rejection.
His own rejection.
Of course.
Right.
He's the rejecter in his life.
Yeah.
He's not even looking to the outside. Yeah.
He's not really looking that hard to the outside. Not really. But anyway, the museum. So one of the things I did on this trip, which I've actually never done, sort of shockingly, is I got the audio things for visiting the museums because the museums were kind of overwhelming with all the art. And I'm like, I'm here on a research trip. And even though I know a fair, I know a lot about art and I've studied this period, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to get the headphones that are going to take me to specific paintings and teach me along the way. And so my friend Yolanda, she and I went, and she was a little resistant to the headphones. But at the end, we were both like, oh my God, that was the best way to go through. Because here's the thing. It was crowded in the museum. It wasn't overly crowded. I mean, it was definitely crowded. But because we had the focus with the headphones and it was talking to us about the painting in front of us, we had something to focus on. Uh-huh. So you weren't so drawn into like the overwhelm of all the people. Uh-huh. And I felt like it was an incredible learning. So this is one of the books I bought. I'm showing you right now, Van Gogh Masterpieces.
Let's see, Masterpieces in the Van Gogh Museum. It's a big, maybe about 10-inch by 12. It's all color inside.
With plates of his paintings.
Plates of his paintings? What does that mean, plates?
Oh, the paintings they call them the plates.
So this is one of the books you got. So what, other than the headset thing and the
organization,
the organization was something you liked?
I loved the organization, and I loved that not only like on one floor they had a bunch of his letters to his brother. It was like taking you through his life in not only just the paintings and telling you about his style and why he did this and that and the other thing, but then they got into some of the letters and some artifacts of his, and just like you got to go through his life in a more intimate way, and I just felt like it was a biography of Van Gogh, like the whole place is dedicated to you understanding this incredible painter who broke ground. Now he broke ground in a different way. He was influenced by the Impressionists, but he's really more like, he's considered more of a post-impressionist. And if you look at his painting style, when he really, like, his whole thing was to find his own style. And he painted for 10 years. So all of these hundreds and hundreds of works that he did were painted in the 10 years.
And that was in the beginning of the 19th century?
No, it was, he painted basically mid 70s to late 80s, like 1877 or 8
so
to
like about a
1888.
decade after the Impressionists came out.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the Impressionists. So he was very influenced. He lived in Paris for a little bit. He went to Arles, down in the south of France, and he painted in France. But he has that swirly paint style. If you think of some of like the Starry Night, you probably can't see that in your head. But his trees are kind of swirling brush styles, and his skies are swirling brush styles, and like there's a lot of energy in it. And he used color. His big thing was, because he was so emotional, that he wanted to convey emotion in the painting.
Yeah.
And he wanted you to feel what he was feeling.
Okay, so there's something I just want to name. So it's, first of all, I get it. Fascinating. And I can't quite see the things you're describing, but I can tell you that the energy I get from his paintings is very dark. It's very sad. And like all his paintings are very dark to me. They're almost like there's sadness in all his paintings.
Even the flower?
Show me one. Yeah, look how they're almost like wilty, but in a very like somebody bent them. Like it's almost like a flower mache, like almost like they're forced to be bent.
Let me see. Oh, look at this one. There's another iris one.
Yeah, I mean, even in that one, there's a whole section, portion of the flowers that is kind of like, there's always sadness in his.
True. The thing is, his sunflowers, there's a really famous painting. But he wanted to show the real. He was very interested in the real. Van Gogh did at least 40 self-portraits.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that, is he didn't have any money to pay the models. So he decided he would paint himself.
Wow.
So there was a practical reason why we have so many portraits of Van Gogh.
So it's not because he was so obsessed with himself. In fact, he was the quintessential not obsessed with myself, because he was unworthy. So it's almost like for him to paint himself was even painful.
Yes. And so he used himself as his own model.
Yeah.
And which showed his various states. And he was really interested in painting what was true. So that's why, like, some of the flowers, they are dying, because that's kind of how flowers are. They're transient. He caught the transient, I feel.
But it's almost like all his paintings, the transient phase that he's catching is the past the peak.
Oh. Look at this beginning color palette.
Oh yeah, so dark.
So dark.
Yeah. Okay, I get Van Gogh. Very depressing. But it is. There's almost like a...
Heavy.
It's more than that. It's like when you read the book, you just want to fucking grab the person by the shoulders and just slap him a few times and said, oh my God, you're so self-consumed, not even seeing how good you are and what you do and finding the joy in what you do, because he was so self-consumed with his wound. Classic 4 on the Enneagram. Classic 4. He was always looking at the lack, never saw the good, and so it was karmic.
Okay, you have a point.
No, I'm just saying, this is what this is about, right? What is the whole point of Kabbalah? Is that there is a model for consciousness, and everybody lives by the same model, and it's brilliant in its simplicity. And there's archetypes. The emotional archetype that Van Gogh embodied
is the emotional archetype of the subdued, the meek, the one that's always afraid. He had his fears. He didn't suffer from anger. Like you read the life of the artist, you see consciousness.
True.
Because you can see they paint their own consciousness. That's all they can paint, especially these artists or the consciousness of society.
Yeah.
That's why I love art. Because I look at art and I take 5 minutes. That totally threw me off. Take 5 minutes and hold on, it's all good. Take 5 minutes and like get all the like joy of the fact that you helped me learn art, because okay,
but I think this is important. So actually, let's say it for you guys who are out there. When I met Erez, he thought art was stupid.
Absolutely.
And I would love you to actually talk about that, because
I will.
Because you're now talking about you love art and the collective consciousness and blah blah blah. But the journey from where you were and what was the shift for you, like
going back to Van Gogh.
Yes.
You want to grab the guy, you want to bitch slap him a little bit around, and it was karmic.
Yeah, that's
when you put
true,
him on his temple, he was karmic that he would not sell a painting. He literally manifested his life into
his
reality into existence by the words, because we create our reality we create our reality by our words. And when you read, and he documented his words by writing letters to his brother Theo. So when you read the letters, you literally see, and it's a great book because she just translated the letters, but she also wrote an abstract story around it to give us the context. It was a beautifully written novel. Like she did a great job from a writer's perspective, because she only had the letters. So how could she describe what happened in between? And she managed to do that somehow. I remember a line from the book that totally helped me shift my own consciousness. It was a line in the book that he was not eating for a very long time. And somebody passed and gave him an apple.
Oh, yeah.
And he took a bite from the apple, and then he regretted eating because before he wasn't even hungry. And that was the first time I realized that if after you don't eat for a while, you actually are not hungry. And that helped me. That was the shift, I think, for me. That was the switch to actually start considering fasting when I was obsessed with food and when I had the chronic fatigue. And this sentence made an impact. And then I realized after a very long time the wisdom that this sentence, that this line hides in it. Every time we lean into our false desire, and food is considered in mysticism false desire because it's a desire of the body, it grows.
Oh, right.
It grows immediately. And when you actually forget about it, it goes away. It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. So anyway, just kind of an interesting, great book. I'll write the names of all the books when I.
Oh, nice.
Let's go back. So the museum, the layout. I got the museum. Now that we've bitch slapped Van Gogh karmically, he did get what he deserved, I guess. Like at least from So
right.
why do you like him? Like because you told me on the phone. You said something. We were talking through WhatsApp, and you said.
Oh yeah.
You said that, wow, Van Gogh really, I can't remember how you said, but something about Van Gogh really impacted you. And there's a whole thing with Van Gogh. I think that's the language
like he's my teacher.
Oh, yes, that's what you said. So why?
I feel like Van Gogh's my teacher. Well, he was a person who, deeply spiritual, deep seeker. And what I feel he was seeking was that union with God, which is ultimately the expression of our deepest self.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really what I'm about. And he was mainly self-taught. So this is another thing that's very different. He was mainly self-taught. So, in my own art path, I I haven't followed a very conventional path of, I haven't followed a conventional path of anything, but of art also. And there's something about like sort of the quest for, like I can feel that quest within myself for my own style, which I have in my own art, but something more. Like it's like there's something. Do you know what I mean? Like each piece. So each piece I do that I finish, that I, like when I really feel it's finished, I fall in love with the piece. Like I fall in love with each piece. They're like a little piece of me.
Is that quest, is it pleasant or is there a painful aspect
and there's
to it?
a slight pain to it.
Okay, what is the pain?
It's the wanting, it's the lack.
It's the lack.
But when I'm actually in the process of creating art, I'm so present in it that there's literally a sense of divine union.
Sounds just like Van Gogh to me.
Yes, so it's a very healing place. But what one of the things I love, and I'll just say, because I do these talisman paintings where I'm working with they're the soul portraits, working with someone else. And what is so incredible about that is that it could never exist except for me dancing with this other person's consciousness. And so whatever comes out of that conversation of energetic dialogue is its own incredible, unique thing.
Okay. So this is sort of, you're doing what Van Gogh did. Think about it. He painted the consciousness of the people he had that dance with them. I mean, he didn't call it a talisman painting or whatnot, because you're also adding a spiritual intention into your painting. So what Dan does, so this is a great time after, let's see, 1 hour and 14 minutes to introduce Diane. So Diane is my wife, as you know from all the rest of the episodes. Diane is an artist. And she had her own journey with art in terms of what she did in her life and this and that. And that's a whole different topic. But the point is that Diane studies arts and consciousness. So she studies consciousness through art history. She is studying how to express consciousness through her art. And she does this in a unique process where she paints a painting that's called talisman painting, where she, kind of sometimes she reads the books they read. For example, she did this painting for somebody in California. I remember he was a physicist, and she's literally mathematician. So she literally read this book that was a very Flatland. That was the name of the book. Great book, by the way. And it was very logical, and it totally impacted your painting. Yeah, and you were painting. It was very. At some point, I remember one of the. It was literally like Kandinsky.
Oh yeah.
It was very like all these triangles and this and that. It was very interesting. So that's kind of what Diane does, and that's fascinating to me because Diane is teaching me art by share the reason Dan was talking about before how I fell in love with art. The truth is I fell in love with something completely different than what she fell in love in. To understand what I fell in love, she's in love with, I mean, maybe you want to tell what you're in love with, but my impression of you is that you're in love with the color, you're in love with shape, you're in love with the way it looks, and you also have a particular relationship to the to the history of it. But is that what you're in love with? What are you in love with art?
Yeah, I mean, I would say all those things. I'm also in love with the process the artist goes through to be skillful enough to do these things.
Yeah, so the artistic process. Yeah. What I'm in love with can be demonstrated by the following story. I used to have guns in the house. And Dan said repeatedly that she didn't really want guns in the house. And for me, it was a whole ego thing. I was, whatever. That's a story for some other time. But the point to our story is that at some point I decided to sell all the guns and to buy art for Diane. So I did. So I sold all of them, and I had a particular amount of money. And I never bought art in my life because I always considered art a waste of money. But that was a gift for her. So it was okay. And the fact that it would be like with the money from the guns would make it like this beautiful, beautiful gift. And in the process of, so here's the deal. So here I am. I got, like $2,000, like sold all those guns. It's a hefty amount of money. Like it's real art.
Yeah.
And I have no fucking idea what to buy. I have one clue. Because I'm the clueless, literally. I have one clue. She said about this local artist that she really liked his painting. There's this guy that was painting houses in the Palouse. The Palouse is an area in eastern Washington.
Barnes.
Barnes. So somehow I got the name. And I'm going, and I remember we visited a particular gallery, and of course I would be bored in all these galleries, like, again, we're seeing art. And she would drag me to all these places, But I went there and I asked them, and there was this one painting that just felt like the right size. And I saw this painting and something happened. And I couldn't quite understand what happened because it wasn't logical. But I looked at the painting, and it's as if I saw all the colors in the painting. Like it represented everything. It represented, like, you look at this painting, and I'll take a picture and I'll put it in the show notes, but it's beautiful. It's this barn, and there's like, you can't tell if it's sunset or sunrise. It looks sort of like sunrise, but it could be sunset. And yet at the same time, it can be day and it could be night. It could be a fall. It could be almost any season except for winter, I guess. It's just like, it's timeless. Everything. It's timeless, and it's stateless. And it just, like, I felt it. I felt the art can change you. And so I buy this painting, and she comes back from California. And I give you the painting, but in the process, I realized that I didn't buy you the painting. I bought me the painting. But I think the gift for you was that I finally got it.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing.
So anyway, very interesting. So I think over time, what I realized, what I fell in love with when it comes to art, is that it reflects a state of consciousness, and that you can look at art and you can study art, especially art history, and looking at and understand what happened to humanity from a macro perspective. I mean, you can look and study humanity from, like that book, I did an episode about it, or at least I mentioned in an episode, The Brief History of Humanity by Yuval Harari. And it's a great book because it describes what happened. You can do the same with art, and you see not what happened to humanity from a developmental, patriarchal, patriarchal, masculine, linear perspective, but you can see what happened to humanity's consciousness. Art is the history book for humanity's consciousness evolution.
Oh, and let me tell you, like, that's why I was an art history major. It was an amazing way to study history. Like, it was an amazing way because we had to constantly contextualize art within the socio-political and economics of the time.
Yeah.
So it was a constant, why did the artist do this kind of question for the particular period.
Was that in San Francisco?
No, I studied that at UCLA.
UCLA. So what was that was art history. That was your bachelor.
That's my bachelor's. My master's in it is in arts and consciousness.
You see, like, I'm clueless about my wife's own studies. So both your degrees were in
art.
Los Angeles.
No.
So where did you do the?
So I did arts and consciousness up in the Bay. I think we're getting tired.
Yeah, I'm getting tired. Okay. So here's the deal. Bringing back. So that's why I love art. And that's my story with art. And I'm very grateful. Thank you, my beautiful wife, for introducing me to art.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it.
And it's really a privilege to see your journey, because I can see how it's actually very inspiring to see how you study your masters, and how you take the time to go and understand them. And it's just really interesting for me to see how your paintings are going to change as a result of, this trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, and I just want to say, so we've touched on the Impressionists, and I just want to leave it open for another episode, because I spent 3 hours at the Georges Pompidou Center in Paris.
Yeah.
Which was, it is, and they say this, and I think it's really true. It's one of the most incredible modern art museums in the world. And their collection of modern art, and I'm talking 20th century into this century, is phenomenal.
Okay, so if this episode is the Impressionist, the one you're talking about will be modern art?
Yeah, it would be 20th century art.
20th century art. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know anything about 20th century art. So, well, maybe I do, and I don't know I do.
Yeah,
because I didn't think I know anything about the Impressionists. And what do you know? I knew a lot about the post-Impressionist Van Gogh.
There you go.
Who I read a book about.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we don't know what we don't
And
know
Renoir.
until we realize we don't know, and we don't know what we know until we realize what we know. And Renoir, right? The cheeky dude.
Cheeky dude.
the peachy cheeky. So here we are. I just want to name this, right? Because we have this. Okay, this is like so fucking funny. All the women I interview in this, or not interview, like that talk to me on this podcast, keep banging the microphone.
Am I banging the microphone?
Yeah, me too.
Oh.
I'm telling you, we all like unaware of our body in relationship to the microphone. And just for you guys to know, everybody, we're sitting here snuggled on this couch. Diane and I are sort of like, our legs are kind of crossed. It's really nice, actually. I'm so glad you're back.
Oh,
I missed you.
thank you.
Yeah, I kind of did. So I kind of didn't miss you. Do you know how like we were talking about that when we were gone? Like it was sort of like, oh, she's gone. I can do my thing.
Yeah.
It was great, actually.
Yeah.
And then like 2 days ago, it was like, okay, I'm ready for her to come back.
Yeah.
And then you were
That's
like,
how I was.
yeah. And then you like even texting just like, so you asked me, so do you miss me? And I was like, the instinct is to say it, but I was like, no. And it was like, I knew you'd get it.
Yeah, because I'm the same way.
You feel the same way, yeah.
I think it's really loving what you do. And to me, this is like actually doing this chat and recording it, because I was a little resistant to this, is actually really nice, because
I do want to say one last thing. So Diane, one of the things Diane does is lead trips to India. She does that. She did that last year. She's doing it again next year. She led a great trip with me, actually, to Thailand. I was there. But the trips to India are very cool because it's a wonderful way to see India in a non-pressured way. And that's what she does on the trip. She teaches consciousness through what we see. There's all kind of unique things that she does. And I'm going to let her talk about it next time, not right now, because we're all tired. But the point is, I'm saying it now because of Isabella, you, my favorite listener in Australia, because the only listener I know in Australia, and because she's awesome. And thank you for all those little things on the Kabbalistic Mystic page, Isabella. I always, every time you were interacting, I was like, oh, there she is. She's still there. It's nice. So the reason I'm telling you this, Isabella, because the woman who's arranging those trips is actually from Australia.
Melbourne.
And Mela. And what's her company's name?
Her company's name is Touch of Spirit Tours.
Yeah. And so she and Diane partnered, and the energy was really great. And then they're just taking these groups to India, and next year they're going to North India. Diane brings the her people, like the Americans, and Mela brings the
It's a fun mix.
Australians.
Yeah.
So it's a super fun mix.
Yeah.
So Isabella, if you ever wanted to see India, that could be a chance and bring friends. But
It's a very intimate group. We only have room for 12 people.
and you have like 5, I think.
We already
right?
have 5 signed up.
Yeah, I don't think I'm coming, sweetie.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, I think we're good.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Mwah.
That was it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. To see a list of the books that were mentioned in this episode and to see all the paintings that we spoke about, go to the show notes on Kabbalisticmystics.com. Just click listen and listen on the web and you'll see all the information. I'm going to try to get Diane to sit with me and talk about the 20th century art and how it impacted consciousness in the next few days before the magic is kind of fading away from the trip. From Spokane, Washington, I'm your host, Radio Batat, and I wish you love in every moment.